This week we're learning the Sikh of Parshas Vayero, Tavshin and Beis. The Sikh can be found in Sefer HaSichos Tavshin and Beis, Chelik Aleph, page 85. The Rebbe starts off by saying that it is known that in addition to the fact that all matters of Torah are always a Hayro, are always a lesson, as we know that Torah is Milashon Hayro, so it's always a lesson to each and every Yid in all places and in all times. There's a special emphasis on the lesson that we could take from the Inyanim of the Torah of the Parsha of the week, which they have a special connection to this particular time. From this time, these Inyanim continue to give us lessons for the rest of the year as well. Furthermore, since all matters of Torah are absolutely accurate, so it makes sense to say that in addition to the general connection of the Parsha of the week to this particular time of the year, there's also a lesson from the particular day in which Shabbos falls out. The Shabbos in which we read this Parsha of the week falls out on a particular day in the month, so there must be some sort of connection with that day of the month as well. Regarding this particular Shabbos, so first and foremost, of course, the Hayro from Shabbos from Parshas Vayero. But in addition to that, the Rebbe also wants to learn a Hayro from the way Shabbos Parshas Vayero fell out in that particular year in Tavshin Beis, that it fell out on the 18th day of Cheshvan, Chai Mar Cheshvan. So in addition to the special quality of the day of Chai Mar Cheshvan, which the Rebbe is going to explain soon, it is also within 3 days to the special day of Chof Mar Cheshvan, the birthday of the Rebbe Rashab, the Rebbe Nishmas Eden. And in many ways, in many things, when you have 3 days next to each other, something within 3 days of each other, so there's in many situations it's counted as one inyan, as one mitzvah. So Chai Mar Cheshvan is very much connected to Chof Mar Cheshvan, as will be explained later. So the Rebbe says in Seif Beis that we're going to understand this by first looking at the famous story of the one whose Yom Holedus it is on Chof Cheshvan, which is of course the Rebbe Rashab, and in connection to Parshas Vayero. So the famous story goes that when the Rebbe Rashab was 4 or 5 years old, he went into his grandfather Tzemach Tzedek on Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Vayero, and he started crying. And he said, why is it that Hashem appeared to Avraham Avinu, and to us Hashem doesn't appear? So the Tzemach Tzedek replied that when a Yid Tzaddik decides at the age of 99 years old that he needs to circumcise himself, that he needs to have a bris, he is deserving that the Eibishter should reveal himself to him. Now this story emphasizes, seemingly, that Vayero love Hashem, that Hashem appearing is only shaykh to a Yid Tzaddik that at the age of 99 years old decides to have a bris. In other words, even a Tzaddik of a regular nature is not shaykh to the Gilui of Vayero love Hashem. And it is only a Tzaddik of such a high nature of the age 99 of having a bris. As this could be understood itself from the fact that the Tzemach Tzedek is answering this to the Rebbe Rashab, who even as a little boy, he's also a tzaddik. As the Gemara says, butzin mikatve yediyah, which is a Gemara simply that means that you could tell already from the very, very young fruit or the young pumpkins, you could already tell what they're going to be like when they grow up. But it's a Gemara meaning that you could tell about great tzaddikim from the youngest age, what they're going to be like when they grow up. So here is the Rebbe Rashab, obviously a tzaddik at the youngest age. And we could even see this from the idea that he cares about the Gilui Elikus to such an extent that he's crying, why doesn't Hashem appear to him like Avraham Avinu? And yet we're saying that a regular tzaddik is not deserving of this Gilui, only a tzaddik of the age of 99 that decides to have a bris. But if that's the case, we need to understand what is the lesson to us from Vayero Elav Hashem, of Hashem appearing to Avraham Avinu. How is that a lesson to a regular Yid and to each and every Yid, someone that's not on the level of this tzaddik in a revealed way, in a practical way, especially not on the level of a tzaddik of 99 years old having a bris? So in order to explain this, the Rebbe says in Gimel, we first need to understand a little bit more this idea of Vayero love Hashem, of Hashem appearing to Avraham Avinu, that happens through the mitzvah of mila. So it is known that this special Gilui of Elikus, the special revelation of godliness that happens after and as a result of the mitzvah of mila, was a Gilui Elikus, was a revelation of a very, very high nature, completely not comparable to the Vayero Hashem el Avram, to the way the Eibishter appears to Avraham Avinu in Parshas Lech Lecha, before the story of the bris milah, before Avraham Avinu having the bris. And what is the difference? The difference is twofold. First of all, as far as the level of elikus, as far as the level of godliness that's being revealed, that over here it's Vayero Elov Havaya, it's a Gilui of Shem Havaya, which is much higher than Shem Elikim. And within Shem Havaya itself, it's a very high level of Shem Havaya, even higher than the level of Shem Havaya that's mentioned in Parshas Lech Lecha. So that's first of all the advantage in this Gilui Elikus over here. And second of all, in how it comes down to Avraham Avinu, the pasuk says Vayero Elov Havaya, that Havaya appears to him. That means this very, very great Gilui of Elikus came down and revealed itself, was accepted in Avraham Avinu. That means he was a keli, he was a receptacle to this amazingly great Gilui, that it penetrated, came inside of him in a pnimius, whereas before he had the bris, so at that point he didn't have the koyach to stand. With the Eibishter was nizgalat to him, he would fall down, he wasn't able to stand. So Davka over here, it's a higher Gilui Elikus, and yet it's able to come into Avraham in a pnimius. This idea that it's a higher Gilui Elikus and coming into a pnimius is also hinted in the words, V'hu yoshev goymer kechoim hayom. It says Avraham Avinu was sitting at the tent at the heat of the day. And here again we have a remez to do these two things. On the one hand, choim hayom, the heat of the day, which means the Eibishter took the sun out of its shield, represents, spiritually speaking, on a very, very great Gilui of Shemesh Havaya, the sun. The heat of the sun represents the Gilui of Elikus that was shining in a very strong way. As the sun is without the shield, it means the way Havaya is not covered by Shem Elikim. On the other hand, what do we say about Avraham? That at the same time, V'hu yoshev, he's sitting down. That means he is able to accept it. He is able to absorb this very, very great Gilui Elikus in a way of his siyashvus. That means in a settled way. He's able to absorb it, he's able to take it in, and not to become completely nullified by it. He's able to completely handle or tolerate this Gilui Elikus. Why is it that this very, very high level of Elikus that comes down into a pnimius happens specifically through the mitzvah of mila? So the Rebbe explains in Sif Daled, because in the mitzvah of mila itself we also have these two extremes. On the one hand, the mitzvah of mila is higher than all the other mitzvahs of the Torah. We say that all of the other mitzvahs of the Torah, the Rambam tells us, the Eibishter made 3 brisas, 3 covenants with the Yidden for all the rest of the mitzvahs of the Torah. Whereas regarding the bris milah, the Eibishter made 13 covenants. It says 13 times the word bris in the Torah regarding the bris milah. So on the one hand, it's a mitzvah that's higher than all the other mitzvahs. At the same time, we say this is the only mitzvah that comes down and reveals itself and penetrates the gashmis, the keguf mamish, as the pasuk says, it's my bris in your flesh forever. That means to say that this is a skashrus from the Eibishter in a way that's completely higher than seichel, higher than logic. That's the whole idea of a bris. And where is it coming down? This highest level of Gilui Elikus, higher than seichel, it's coming down in the physical body, in the gashmis, the body. Furthermore, not only is it the kedusha coming down into the gashmis, the keguf, in the body, but really the mitzvah of mila also has an effect on the gashmis of the world, because the promise that the Eibishter made for Eretz Yisrael, for the land, for the gashmis, the land, also came as a result and in the schus of the mitzvah of mila. That means that the mitzvah of mila also gives the koyach not only to make the gashmis, the keguf, a holy thing for the Eibishter, but also to make the gashmis, the land of Eretz Canaan, into Eretz Yisrael, because again, it was through the mitzvah of mila that the Eibishter promised Avraham Avinu Eretz Yisrael. And what does Eretz Yisrael mean? Eretz, it's called Eretz also from the word sheratzasa, because it wanted and it ran to do the will of the Eibishter. And in fact, ultimately, the whole world becoming a dir lo yizbarach, and that all starts with the mitzvah of mila. To put it in other words, and on a bit of a deeper level, the Rebbe explains in Sif Hey, these two extremes within the mitzvah of mila, on the one hand, that it's a very, very great level of elikus. As we said before, it's higher than all the mitzvahs of the Torah. On the other hand, where is it coming down? Where is it being revealed? Dafka in the lowest place, in the gashmis, the kabadi, and in the gashmis, the world. Really, these two extremes are dependent and connected with each other, because it is specifically because it's coming down to such a low level. That is why such a high level of Elikus is being revealed. Why is that? This is based on the famous concept that the whole purpose of why the Eibishter created the world is, of course, because Nesava Kodesh Baruch Hu, the Eibishter, had a desire to have a dira b'tachtonim, to have a dwelling in the lowest place. In other words, that the Gili Elikus, not only does it go through all of Seder Ishtalshlus, all of the worlds, and eventually also come to the lowest world, but on the contrary, the main dira for the Eibishter, the main dwelling for the Eibishter, is Davki in the lowest place. Why is that? Because the level of Elikus that is revealed in the higher Olamois is called the level of Giluyim, only that which is a revelation, an extension of Hashem, but not Kavayachol, the essence of Hashem himself. But where's the essence of the Eibishter? That level which is higher than Giluyim, the very essence of the Eibishter, specifically B'tachtoinim, specifically down here in the lowest place. This is where we make the dira for the Eibishter, the dira for the very essence of Hashem, where he reveals himself with his whole essence. Or to use the expression of the pasuk, Shlomo HaMelech says, Hini Hashamayim Shumei Hashamayim Lo Yichal Kolucha. The heaven and the heavens of the heavens cannot contain you. And what can contain you? Dafka the Beis HaMikdash. So even though Shlomo HaMelech simply, seemingly is asking this, how is this possible? But at the end of the day, this is the maskana. This is also what ends up happening, that the highest heavens cannot contain Hashem, the highest oilamis cannot contain the Gilui of Atzmos, and Dafka, the Beis HaMikdash, this physical world, the physical Beis HaMikdash becomes a place for Hashem, and in fact from the Beis HaMikdash light comes out to the rest of the world, that the rest of the world also becomes a dira for the Eibishter. And as it is known, that the main Gilui and Shleimus, the main revelation of the Yeshua Amiti, that means the ultimate and most real entity, which is of course Hashem himself. Where does he express himself? Dafka in the Yesh HaGashmi, Dafka in the physical entity, in the physical reality of this world. Dafka over here is where the essence of Hashem is revealed. Hashem, the way he is higher than everything else. Hashem, the way there's nothing else that precedes him. He is the one that precedes everything else. He is the one that creates everything else. And Davka, this level, this deepest level and aspect of Hashem, expresses itself and reveals itself Davka in this lowliest world. So just to summarize, in the meantime, the Sikha, what the Rebbe is saying, is that by the mitzvah of mila and through the mitzvah of mila, what happened by Avraham Avinu was that on the one hand, the greatest Gilui Elikus came about, and where does it express itself? Davki in the Gashmi is the Keguf, through the mitzvah, and ultimately also in the Gashmi is the world, in Olam Haza HaGashmi. Based on all of this, the Rebbe says now, it's evolved, we can understand that this idea of Vayero Elov Hashem, this Gilui Elikus, which is higher than all other inyanim, and yet at the same time it comes down and penetrates, comes to a pnimius, into Avraham Avinu. That's what happens through mitzvah smila. The truth of the matter is, we have both of these things also by each and every yid. Why is that? What does it say by the mitzvah of mila? Va'ato as brisi sishmar, the Eibishter says, you will keep my bris, you and your children after you for all generations. That means that this idea of the bris, the covenant that happens from the Eibishter and goes into the physical body of the yid, happens also by every single yid for all generations. To such a degree that the idea of a bris is so much tied with what a yid is, that even before he actually goes ahead and has the bris, he is also already shaykh and called to a certain degree someone that has a milah. We have a halacha. The halacha goes as follows. Halacha and the halacha of Nedarim, if a person takes a vow, if a person comes along and says, I take a vow that I'm not going to have pleasure of anyone that is mulim. Mulim means people that are circumcised. So the halacha is that he would be asur in any yid. He wouldn't be allowed to have hana, pleasure of any yid, even a person that technically for some reason didn't have a bris yet. Why is that? Because even if he didn't have a bris, a yid is already called a mol. The name of a yid has the title that is shaykh to the union of a mila. It's as if he had a bris already. So too regarding a woman, even though a woman simply, of course, doesn't have a bris, by a woman also, he says, command the she's also considered as if she's mol, as if she has a bris. What do we see from this? That a yid has a very, very strong connection with the idea of a bris, even before he had a bris. So on the one hand, a yid has a bris. The bris affects his physical body. What happened by Avraham Avinu when he had the bris? He had a great Gilui Elikus that came together with that. The same thing is true by every single yid. Every single yid also has the Vayero of Hashem, this revelation of Elikus that happens as mitzvah of mila. Because, as the Alter Rebbe tells us in Shulchan Aruch, when does our neshama come in? Knisas nefesh zoy hakdosha, the entering of the holy nefesh of our nefesh Elikus. When does it start entering the body? That's at the mitzvah of mila. What is the nefesh Elikus? The nefesh Elikus is a very, very high level of godliness. It's a chelik elikami mal mamash. It's a part of Hashem. And we say about a part of the essence, when you grasp a part of the essence, as if you have the whole thing. So therefore, it's as if in the chelik elikami mal mamash, in the part of Hashem, you have Hashem himself. In the brackets, the Rebbe points out that this word, etzem kishata toifes, when you grasp the etzem, it's as if you have part of the etzem, it's as if you have the whole etzem. The Rebbe says usually the word toifes, grasping something, is actually the way we acquire something. When you acquire something, that's the way you become the boss, that's the way you take ownership of it. So in this case, if we are saying that we are grasping and we have a part of Hashem inside of us, it's kavayocho, as it were, as if we are taking ownership, so to speak, on that, the essence of Hashem that's inside of us. So therefore, again, just like Avraham Avinu, through his mitzvah of mila gets a great gilui of elikus, exactly the same thing happens by each and every one of us. Every single yid has a shaychus to the bris milah, and by the bris milah we also get a shaychus to the gilui elikus. In other words, we get that holy neshama, which is a part of Hashem. And this part of Hashem, just like by Avraham Avinu, we said he had it, but pnimis, it was internalized inside of him. In a similar way, the neshama, the nefesh olikis, goes into a pnimis, goes in an internal way, in the gashmi is the guf. This is a guf that externally looks like and is similar to the guf of a goy, and yet the neshama goes inside this guf. And in fact, the real chayas, the real vitality of the gashmi is the guf, is from this godly soul. And that's what we say even regarding the gashmi is the guf of each and every yid, that it's a holy body. And what's a yid called? The body of a yid is called with the word Adam. A person is called a Adam, a yid is called a Adam. What does the word Adam mean? An atom Korean Adam means specifically yidden are called Adam. Why are we called Adam? The word Adam could also mean we are similar or compared, because we are compared kavayochel to Hashem. That means the kedusha of the neshama also impacts the guf. Says the Rebbe in Siv Zayin, so this idea, this Vayero El of Hashem, the revelation of godliness, which as we said is the neshama entering the yid's body and having an impact on him, expresses itself practically in all matters of the person's life, even at the youngest age. Some examples for this, says the Rebbe. First and foremost, the idea of the recognition of Hashem. The Rebbe is quoting over here the Alter Rebbe that says, Hamoir hu beis galus, that the luminary, meaning the essence of Hashem, is standing in a revealed state, that therefore even little children are aware of the Eibishter's existence. And the Rebbe says furthermore that really by little children there's a certain advantage. It's known that there was a certain Godel B'Yisrael that expressed himself, that whilst many great Mikubolim have all sorts of kavonos and thinking of different spheres and different things during davening, so this particular Godel B'Yisrael said, Ani mispalel, I daven with the kavona of the little child. Since the little child is not shaykh, doesn't have any idea about any spheres, any levels of giluyim of revelations, so his davening is directly to the essence of Hashem. So therefore there's a certain advantage in the recognition of a child of the Eibishter, that he's not being distracted by anything else. And furthermore, the Rebbe says, not only is his connection to the Eibishter expressed only regarding ruchni is the kinyanim, like davening to the Eibishter, but even in gashmi is the kinyanim, like eating and drinking. As this is emphasized by little children, that we educate them with birchas hamazon, which this is a bracha, of course, that its obligation is from the Torah, but it's in a way that a little child understands in his seichel that we need to thank the Eibishter for the gashmi is the food. And the Rebbe relates the story that the Gemara says regarding Abaye and Rava, that when they were little children, they were sitting in front of Rabba, and Rabba asked them, who are we benching to birchas hamazon? So they said, we're benched to the Eibishter. So Rabbah turned to them and said, where is the Eibishter? So Rava pointed to the ceiling. Abaye went outside and pointed to the sky. And that's actually what the Gemara says, that expression that we said before, that this is what people say, butzin, mekatve yediyah, that those little pumpkins, you could tell already from the youngest age what they're going to be like when they grow up. But getting back to the point over here, so what are we saying? That a child recognizes Hashem, and not only in his ruchni is the kinyanim, but even regarding his gashmi is the kinyanim, he sees the connection to Hashem. Furthermore, not only regarding the food that he eats, that sustains him and becomes part of his flesh and blood, but also regarding the physical items and objects in his house, as is emphasized in the mitzvah of mezuzah. And the Rebbe says that specifically mezuzah, there's a special chavivus, we see a special endearment by each and every yid, especially, again, little children. And we see that little children by nature are being drawn, they lift themselves to kiss the mezuzah. They lift themselves up to kiss the mezuzah several times a day, especially at the beginning of the day, right when they wake up from the sleep, and the end of the day, before going to sleep. So what happens when we put the mezuzah on the door of the house, and at the door of each and every room of the house? So now it's noticeable that all the things in the room, and the whole room, and the whole house, are all connected. They all belong to Hashem Echad. So too, by putting holy Sfarim and a pushka in the house. And the Rebbe says, as we mentioned many, many times, that it's very, very appropriate that each and every child, boy and girl, should have in his room holy Sfarim like a chumash, a siddur, etc., and a pushka, all that belong to him. And through all of this, the whole house becomes a house of Torah, Tefillah, Gemilus Chasadim, similar to the Beis HaMikdash. Like the Pasuk says, V'asu li mikdash v'shachanti b'soicham. We know what the Chazal tell us, that it doesn't say over here, I'll dwell in it, which would just be referring to the one Beis HaMikdash, but b'soicham, referring to each and every yid, both inside of his soul, as well as inside of his house. And from the house, of course, it goes further to his portion in the world, and to the rest of the world. As is emphasized also in the fact that where do we put the mezuzah? We put it at the door of the house and in the tefach, just closest to the outside of the house. This is to show and to indicate that the effect of the mezuzah is also on the outside. Especially when the yid goes outside. The pasuk says, Hashem yishmor tseischo ve'echad, that the Eibush is protecting the yid, both when he's inside, but also when he's going outside and coming inside. And the Yid is constantly permeated with the idea of the mezuzah. As the Chazal tell us, that what's the idea of the mezuzah? Every time the Yid goes in and out, he's encountering the Yichud Hashem, he's encountering the Pasuk Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, he's remembering the unity of Hashem, he's remembering the love to Hashem, and he recognizes and remembers that there's nothing really there forever and ever. The only reality is only the knowledge of the Eibishter himself. And this penetrates also into Zavoida, dealing with the world, making the world into an Eretz Yisrael, as the famous Pisgam, Machdo Eretz Yisrael, to make wherever you are, out of your world, the world around you, into an Eretz Yisrael, and ultimately making the whole world into an Eretz Yisrael, that in the whole world it's recognized its connection to Yisrael, its connection to Torah, as we know that Yisrael itself is Rosh Hashanah, Yeshishim Ribu Yosi is the Torah, that is 600,000 letters to the Torah. That means that really, what's the idea of a Yid? A Yid is the union of Torah. When we say Eretz Yisrael, it means that it's noticeable that this is a land connected to Yidden and to Torah. Meaning that the land becomes a Dira Lo Yizbarich, a dwelling place for Hashem. So in summary, what the Rebbe was saying so far is that what happened by Avraham Avinu? By Avraham Avinu, he was zoicha to a tremendous Gilui Elikus because of the mitzvah of mila. And this Gilui Elikus came inside of him, became part and parcel of him, penetrated his existence. And the Rebbe said that in a similar way really is what happens by each and every one of us. Because we too, through the mitzvah of mila, we are zoicha to get that neshama kedosha, that holy neshama. And the Rebbe says this applies both to men and women, which are shayach to the union of mila, whether they had the mila b'poil, or they are still counted as mahul, as having a bris. So we get that holy neshama. We're getting that Gilui Elikus, similar to Vayero, to the fact that Hashem appears to Avraham Avinu. Hashem also becomes part of our reality. And as the Rebbe explained, that this affects us not only in our davening and our learning, but also in all of our gashmiyas things, that every single part of us become connected to Hashem. Says the Rebbe in Sifches, now we can start understanding the point of the story of the Rebbe Rashab crying. Why is it that Hashem appears to Avraham Avinu and to us he doesn't appear? And the Tzemach Tzedek's answer that when a Yid Tzaddik decides at the age of 99 to have a bris, that he deserves that Hashem should reveal himself to him. What's the discussion over here between the Rebbe Rashab and the Tzemach Tzedek? It's not about the actual mitzias, about the fact of Hashem appearing, meaning the gilui, the revelation of Hashem. That's not the discussion over here. As the Rebbe is about to explain, that of course happens, that Hashem appears to each and every one of us. The discussion and the crying of the Rebbe Rashab was more about us being able to see it in a practical and a revealed way. In other words, not from Hashem's point of view, but from our perspective. The actual fact of Vayero Elav Hashem, meaning that Hashem appears to every single Yid, of course exists inside of each and every Yid. Because of the mila, because of the bris. As we said, that's when the holy neshama comes in. Through that we get that recognition in godliness. And as we said, that penetrates into our physical existence, as we explained previously at length. But the chidush by Avraham, what happened by Avraham was that this idea of Vayero Elav Hashem was in a way that he was able to see it, that he was able to practically see in a revealed way how the Shekhinah is appearing to him and dwelling inside of him. And this is what the Rebbe Rashab is crying. Why is it that Hashem is appeared to Avraham Avinu and to us he doesn't appear? In other words, that he's not appearing to us in a way like he appeared to Avraham Avinu, that we should also be able to see the revelation of Vayero Hashem Elav. So again, the actual fact that Hashem appears, of course, happens to us as well. But why is it that we can't see it with our own eyes? And the Rebbe says, it's now very geschmack also, why the Rebbe Rashab uses the words, why Hashem appeared to Avraham Avinu, to Avraham our father, and to us he doesn't appear. That means to say, even though, of course, the Rebbe Rashab understood the greatness of Avraham Avinu in comparison to himself, nevertheless, his argument, his claim, to the extent that he's crying about it, is that since Avraham is Avinu, since Avraham is the father of each and every Yid, so all of the things of Avraham Avinu, all of his qualities, including this idea that at the age 99 he decided to have a bris, each one of these qualities goes over to all of his children for all generations, meaning to say that regardless of one's own situation and one's own state, he inherits everything from his father, from Avraham Avinu. And therefore, he's complaining that in the same way Hashem appeared to Avraham Avinu, he should appear himself to us as well. That means we should also be able to see the Izgalus of Vayero Hashem Elav. Vayero Elav Hashem. And this is what the Tzemach Tzedek responds, that in order to see the Izgalus, yes, it's true again, that the Eibishter does come to each and every one of us, but in order for us to be able to see it, in a revealed way, we need to be deserving of this through our avodah b'poil, through our practical avodah. Like Avraham Avinu, that because of his great avodah, that at the age of 99 he decided to have a bris, he was deserving that Hashem should appear to him, and that's why he was able to see Begilui in a revealed way, the Vayero Elav Hashem. Now we can much more understand what is the Hayro, what is the lesson from Vayero Elav Hashem in the avodah of each and every one of us. When a Yid sits and learns and the Torah, Vayero Elav Hashem, the Yid needs to know that first and foremost, who is it the pasuk speaking about? It's speaking about yourself, each and every Yid. And the Rebbe says that's why it says Vayero Elav, Hashem appeared to him. Who's the him? To each Yid that's learning this. It doesn't say Vayero El Avraham. It could also be applying to each and every Yid. Since you're a child of Avraham Avinu, you had the bris of Avraham Avinu. So just like Avraham Avinu, Hashem appeared to him because of the bris, Hashem appears to you as well. This knowledge itself arouses inside of the Yid a tremendous desire to see the Hizgalus of Vayero Elav Hashem. As we learned this from the Rebbe Rashab, that even a little child has to have the yearning and the desire to have the revelation of Vayero Elav Hashem to the extent that he's crying about it. And if a Yid has this desire, that he wants to see the Hizgalus of Vayero Elav Hashem, then surely he will do whatever he can, whatever is up to him, to be deserving of this, doing this sort of avodah, like the avodah of the inyan of mila. What does that mean? Regarding this physical body, which that's what the bris is. The bris is brisi b'v'sarchem lebris olam, a bris in one's flesh forever. That means to say he'll make sure that his physical body, all of his 248 limbs, the 365 sinews, will be permeated with kedusha and elikus in an everlasting covenant. So too regarding this portion in the world. We said before that Eretz Yisrael comes because of the mila. Again, the same idea. He will make sure that every single act that he does in the world will all be permeated with making it into an Eretz Yisrael, making every part of the world into a holy place like Eretz Yisrael. And by doing this avodah, one becomes a deserving keli, a fitting keli for the Gilui of Vayero Elav Hashem, both as far as the Gilui is to himself, as well as the revelation in the portion of the world around him, and in the whole world, and the whole world becomes a dira for Hashem. Says the Rebbe in Seif Yud, all of this is specifically emphasized when Parshas Vayero falls out on the 18th day of Cheshvan, on Chai Mar Cheshvan. So the Rebbe is now going to explain the inyanim, the same ideas we just spoke about, namely that we're speaking about drawing down a very high level of elikus, and that it should come down into our gashmis, the geguf, and in the world around us. The Rebbe is going to see that now in the words Chai Mar Cheshvan. The word chayis, from the word chayis, of course, vitality. That represents and indicates the real chayis that every single yid has. That's the chayis, the vitality of the neshama, the chelik alikami mal mamash. And how it comes down into the gashmi is the keguf. What does Chai Mar Cheshvan mean? So the Rebbe explains that this represents drawing down the great chayis of the neshama that's within the guf, coming down even into the weekday and mundane matters. That's what Chodesh Mar Cheshvan is all about. We're starting to get involved in worldly things. This is the first month in the year after Tishrei, which was filled with Yom Tovim, of course. So now we're getting involved in the world. And of course, this is all in order to bring down the Kedusha and Elikus into all mundane matters, like the Lamed Tes Malachos, like all 39 types of work that we're involved in during the week. Meaning to say that in each and every one of them, it should be noticeable that we're doing it in order to make from the whole world a Dira Lo Yizbarech, a dwelling place for Hashem, similar to the Mishkan and the Beis HaMikdash, which was made through these 39 malachos. Now we can understand the connection of Parshas Vayero to Chai Mar Cheshvan. Just like we said before, what is Vayero Elav Hashem? We're speaking about a great revelation of godliness that penetrates and comes down into the guf. That's the idea of Chai, the Chayis of the neshama coming into the guf. But as well as Mar Cheshvan, even when you're involved in the weekday and mundane things of the world, also in them should be noticeable the Gilui Elikus. And straight from Chai Mar Cheshvan, we come in, within 3 days, as we said before, into Chaf Mar Cheshvan. What is the idea of Chaf Mar Cheshvan? So first of all, the Rebbe says, Chaf is the Rosh Tevis, is the first letter, the abbreviation of the word Keser, as well as Chaf, which is of course 20. So in Lashon Kodesh, 20 is Esrim. And the word Esrim is also begematria from the word Keser. So again, Chaf is the Rosh Tevis of the word Keser, and 20, or Esrim, the word Esrim is begematria Keser. What's the significance of this? So the level of Keser we know represents an extremely high level of Elikus, higher than all the spheres. So that's what Chaf is, Keser. And at the same time it comes down into Cheshvan, meaning it's coming down into all the weekday worldly things of Cheshvan, similar to what we said before about the idea of Vayero. Or on a deeper level, that this is Galus, this revelation of Vayero Elav Hashem, of Hashem appearing, and it's coming down into the worldly things of Chodesh Cheshvan. This is connected with the deepest and the highest level, which is the level of Keser, representing the very, very essence, Kavayochel, of Hashem. Says the Rebbe in Seif Yud Aleph. We can now add, regarding all of this, in connection to the Geula Amit Dvar Shleimo through Moshiach Tzidkenu. Of course, one of the promises that we are told, what's going to happen when Moshiach comes. The Pasuk says, Lo yikonif oid meirecha, v'ho yueinecha royes es meirecha. That your teacher, referring to the Eibishter over here, will no longer be blocked from you, will no longer be covered, and your eyes will be able to see Hashem. This is exactly the same idea, of course, of Vayero Elav Hashem, that Hashem appears to Avraham Avinu and to all Yidden, of course, betachlis hashleimus in the greatest way. Furthermore, Not only does the Eibishter appear that the Yid should be able to see him, but the Pasuk says, "V'niglu kvod Hashem v'ro chol basar," that all flesh will be able to see. Not the eyes of flesh, but it says the flesh will be able to see, and all flesh will be able to see. That means that godly revelation will be in all of creation. Like we said before, the idea of chai mar cheshvan, that in all matters of the world, in the cheshvan aspect, in the weekday, in the mundane things of the world, will be noticeable the real chayas, the real vitality of Elikos. And this is also connected to Chaf Mar Cheshvan, which we just said before. Chaf represents the union of Keser. The crown, of course, crown belongs to the king. The crown is connected to the idea of Malchus, to the idea of kingship. So what that means is that La'asid Lavi, when Moshiach is going to come, is going to be revealed the Malchus of the Eibishter being king, the Chaf, the Keser aspect of Hashem, the crown of Hashem, means the way the Eibishter is king over the world, over the whole world, over the idea of Cheshvan. As the Pasuk says, Hashem Yimlech Lo'elam V'ed, Hashem is going to rule forever, referring to the time of La'asid Lavi, that rulership will belong completely to Hashem himself. Says the Rebbe now, based on what we said before, that Vayero of Hashem, the actual appearing of Hashem, the actual existence, and that actual fact that Hashem appears to every Yid is always true by every single Yid. And all we need is that there should be the Hizgalas, the revelation of this. Says the Rebbe, the same thing is true. And we could say, regarding the revelation of Hashem, that happens by the Geula HaMitzvah Shleima Ayidei Moshiach Tzidkeinu. The Rebbe is going to apply the same logic now. And the Rebbe says like this: it's known that in each and every single Yid there is a spark of the Neshama of Moshiach. This is the level called the Yechidah. The spark inside of each and every Yid, that little spark called Yechidah, is a little spark of the general Yechidah, which is the Neshama of Moshiach. That's exactly why we find that a name that applies to Moshiach, we also call every Yid by the name. On the one hand, we have a pasuk, Dorach Koichov mi Yaakov, a star steps out of Yaakov, and we say this refers to Moshiach, the name of Moshiach, Koichov, the star. At the same time, does Mamori Razal say that the word Koichov over here is referring to each and every Yid, because every Yid has a part of Moshiach inside of himself. This is specifically emphasized by little children, by little Yiddish children, as the Razal say that the Yidit Tinoike Shal Beis Rabban, the children learning Torah, are called Mashiachai, my Mashiachim. Says the Rebbe, V'yesh loymar, that the level of Yechidah, this spark of Mashiach, why are the children called Mashiach? Is because it's more revealed by the little children, this level of Yechidah. Why is that? Because since the rest of the koiches, meaning their seichel, their midas, their other koiches are not so revealed yet, therefore they're not getting in the way. And this is similar to what we said before. That's why when they recognize Hashem, it's also the essence of Hashem, nothing else getting in the way. In a similar way, regarding the neshama, is the deepest part of the neshama of the child that's revealed. And this spark of Mashiach expresses itself when every single Yid is fulfilling the shlichus of the Eibishter. That's the way you reveal that spark of Mashiach inside of you. The Rebbe says this is hinted in the fact that the word shliach, together with another 10, which represents the 10 koiches, the 10 faculties of the Yid that's doing the shlichus, shliach, the Yid doing the shlichus with his 10 koiches hanefesh, is begematria Mashiach. Because what's happening over here is, he's doing the shlichus, he is revealing the spark of Mashiach inside of him, that Yechidah, which this spark of Yechidah reveals itself and penetrates and comes down into his physical body and into all of his physical matters, also his physical matters of the world. And finally, when we have all of these sparks of Mashiach inside of all of the Yidden being revealed, that's when the general Mashiach reveals himself, Mashiach Tzidkeinu. And that's, of course, when we're going to have the Gilui Elikos for all of the Yidden, Vayero of Hashem, and inside the world. Again, similar to the idea of Chai Mar Cheshvan, and of course having it B'tachlis Hashlemus. Says the Rebbe, here we have the Hira of Parshas Vayero. That every single Yid has to have this tremendous desire and yearning for Vayero of Hashem, for this godly revelation of the Geula HaMitzvah Shleima, and do everything that he can to be deserving of this. How do you do that? By making sure that every single pu'ula, every single act that you do is being done in accordance to the Maimudu Matzav, to the state of Geula HaMitzvah Shleima, that whatever a Yid is doing is fitting and in accordance with the inyan of Moshiach and Geula. Now, of course, everything that we said until now is true in all times and in all generations. It says that Eben Sifyud Beis, that in all of this, there's a special mila in the later generations, the most recent generations, when we now have the very, very special mila of Chof Cheshvan, was now Nizgala revealed the special quality of Chof Cheshvan. This is the day, Chof Cheshvan, getting the koiches and the brachas from Shabbos Chaimar Cheshvan, which is of course the Yom HaYiledes of the Rebbe Nishmas Eden, the Rebbe Rashab that was born in the year Tov Reish Chaf Aleph, which the Rebbe calls over here the year Kisra, which is also from the word Keser. And of course, on the day of Chof Cheshvan, on the Yom HaYiledes, is the day of Mazolei Goyver, when the Rebbe Rashab's mazel is especially strong. How is this all connected to what we were saying before? One of the main things of the Rebbe Rashab, as we saw already from the youngest age, and as the expression that we said before, that Butzen Mekatvi, that from the youngest age you could tell already about the tzaddik, what he's going to be like when he grows up, and especially once he grew up and he became a Nasi B'Yisrael, was this special hishtadlus, this special effort in this area of Vayero of Hashem, of having Gili Elikus, and not only regarding himself, but also making sure that everyone else has it. As this is emphasized specifically in his Chidush and founding the yeshiva of Toimchei Tmimim, a yeshiva in which we learn the Torah of Nigla and Chassidus all in a complete way, and in a way that Chassidus is learned in proper depth to understand it, like learning a topic of Nigla the Torah, that Chassidus should be understood as well as you learn a piece of Gemara or Halacha. This is similar to the idea of Vayero of Hashem, of the Gili Elikus of Hashem appearing, meaning to say that matters of godliness as they are explained in Chassidus, Das Elikei Avicha, to know Hashem, comes in a way that you could mamash see it, Vayero, to be able to understand it at least in the eye of your mind. And more importantly, that this is of course the Hachana for the Geula Hamitis V'Ashleima through Moshiach Tzidkeinu, where we're going to be learning Pnimiyas HaTorah, the knowledge of Elikus, B'Tachlis Hashleimus, as the Pasuk says, Yishakeni Minishikas Piyu, which means that the Eibishter is going to be speaking to us directly, mouth to mouth, face to face, because Torah Chadashim Yititezi, there will be the new dimensions of Torah coming out directly from the essence of Hashem, and it's going to be in a way that people won't have to teach each other, because everyone's going to know directly Hashem himself. And furthermore, it's going to be in a way of Re'iyah. We're going to see Hashem, Vayero of Hashem, or as the Pasuk V'hoyu Einecha Royu Yises Moirecha, as we quoted before, being able to see godliness with practical Re'iyah with our eyes. And this too is emphasized in the Rebbe Rashab's establishing Toimchei Tmimim, as it's explained in his famous Sikha that starts off with the words Kol hayotzei l'molchemes beis David. In this Sikha, the Rebbe Rashab explains that the Talmidim of Toimchei Tmimim, they are called the Chayolei beis David. They are like the soldiers from the household of David. They are the ones that are going out to fight the people that are trying to stop and fight Moshiach. Or to use the expression of the Rambam in Hilchos Malachim, that where the Rambam says that Moshiach's inyan is going to have to fight the wars of Hashem, and eventually, of course, be victorious. And as this is also hinted in the continuation of those psukim of Asher Cheirfu Ikvos Mishichecha, psukim that discuss about the people that go against Hashem and Moshiach, the pasuk eventually concludes over there with words Baruch Hashem La'olam Amen Va'amen, which the Gemara says the word Amen, and especially a double Amen, represents victory in the war, which of course happens through Moshiach and the revelation of Moshiach b'Poel Mamash. So again, the Rebbe is connecting all of the things that we said before about the Gili Elikus of Vayero of Hashem to the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab's whole inyan was about bringing down, demanding Gili Elikus, and that also the Chassidim, and that every single Yid should be able to have Gili Elikus through learning Chassidus and through establishing Toimchei Tmimim. Says the Rebbe in Sifyud Gimel, all of this is especially emphasized in our generation, which we are the third generation to the Rebbe Rashab and to his Talmidim, the Chayolei beis David, which in our time now is completed, now gets finished and completed. The avoid of these soldiers, Chayolei beis David, to bring the Geula b'Poel Mamash through Dvar Malchus Vayero, and as the words of Kveit Kedushas Meir V'Cham Yad Munasi Dereinu, while he was still alive in this physical world, that we have already completed all of the avodah, and we're standing ready to greet David Malchus Vayero, and especially after the continuation of the avodah of Chayolei beis David in spreading Chassidus to the outside for the past 40 years, as the pasuk says that after 40 years Hashem finally gives us the heart to understand, the eyes to see, and the ears to hear. So therefore, we're already past this stage as well. And within our generation itself, the Rebbe says we're holding already in the Shnas HaTzadik, in the 90th year. Now, of course, Shnas HaTzadik, the 90th year, is referring to the Rebbe's 90th year. That's the Rebbe's Shnas HaTzadik was at that time when the Rebbe said the Sikha. So the Rebbe says, after we finish the 89th year, Shnas HaPeites, Kapitel Peites, what do we say over there? This is the kapitel that speaks about the fights that we have to bring Moshiach, and Baruch Hashem Lo'elam Amin V'Amin, and the victory that we have, that Moshiach has. And now we're already in Kapitel Tzadik. The Kapitel Tzadik speaks about V'inoyam Hashem Elokeinu Aleinu U'maisi Yadeinu Koinaneu. This is the kapitel that speaks about that the Eibishter gives the brachos for the Beis Hamikdash, the Beis Hamikdash loss, and the Beis Hamikdash that the Eibishter himself makes. And within Shnas HaTzadik, we're holding already in Tafshin Nun Beis, Hey Tafshin Nun Beis, which is a Rosh Hashanah Hoya to Hey Shnas Neflois Bakol, maybe a year of wonders in everything. Which wonders are we speaking about? The wonders of the Geula HaSida, as the pasuk says, like in the times of Yitzias Mitzrayim, I will show you wonders. And the Rebbe says wonders over here also means the wonders of the new aspects of Torah that are going to be revealed when Moshiach comes. Pnimiyas HaTorah. Pnimiyas HaTorah, the Rebbe says, is also called Chen. Right? We have many times in Tanya, Kidul Yoydi Chen. So Chen is Rosh Hashanah's Chachma Nestora, the hidden Chachma. But here the Rebbe gives another pirush, another translation to the Rosh Hashanah's Chachma Nifla. So the idea of Pnimiyas HaTorah is this amazing, amazing Chachma, the secrets of Torah that are revealed. It's going to be in a way of Niflois miTorah Secha, wonders compared to all the Torah that we have nowadays. And Niflois Bakoil means in every single thing, as we say in Benching, Bakoil Mikoil Koil. This is similar to the way it was by the Avos. This is where the expression comes from, that it says that the Eibishter gave the Avos a taste of Olam Haba in this world. And this is where the Gemara uses that expression, the Avos, that to them, in regarding them, these expressions are used, Bakoil Mikol Koil, which is of course the Shleimus of La'asid Lovin. Within Tavshin and Beis itself, the Rebbe says we're holding ready Shabbos Parshas Vayero, which has emphasized the special connection to the Geula HaMitzvah Shleima, in which there's going to be the Gilui of Vayero of Hashem, when Hashem is going to appear to each and every Yid, and it falls at, as we said, Chai Marcheshon, which shows bringing down the Chayas, the vitality of godliness in all matters of the world, that we are involved in Chodesh Marcheshon, which the perfection of all of that is after the victory, as we said before, Ashacher, Baruch Hashem Lo'elam Amen V'Amen, which is also, since it's Chai Marcheshon, this pasuk in Kapitel Tilim is also the Shir Tehillim, the end of the Shir Tehillim of Yom Yudches in the month. And we're holding already within 3 days of Chav Marcheshon. Chav, we said before, is the Yin of Keser. And we said that represents the Hizgalas, the revelation of the Eibishter's kingdom over the whole world, L'Asid Lavai. And the Rebbe says we could add that since Chodesh Marcheshon is the first month in the Avodah in the world, to making the world a dira for the Eibishter, a dira b'tachtoinim, so therefore, Cheshvan and Chav Marcheshvan include also the things that are going to be happening in the following months. And therefore, Chav Marcheshvan, which we said Chav represents the Keser of Cheshvan, really includes the Keser of all the months that are to follow. So the Keser of Chodesh Kislev, which Kislev of course finishes with Chanukah, which is the dedication of the Mizbeach and the Beis Hamikdash, and the Nes of the oil, which is also connected to the Pnimiyas HaTorah. Pnimiyas HaTorah is considered like the oil of Torah, and of course that was revealed through Chassidus and Chodesh Kislev. From Kislev we move on to the Keser of Chodesh Teves. Now Chodesh Teves, the Gemara says, is a special month. It's called it's a Yerach, it's a month that Haguf Nenem and Haguf, that one body derives pleasure from another body because of the cold of the winter. So there's the body heat and warmth that people enjoy from being close to each other in Chodesh Teves. But this is also a remez on the Hana that Kvayochel the Eibishter has. The Guf Shalomayla the Eibishter has from the Yesh HaNivra, from the person down here. And the Rebbe from there moves on into the Keser of Chodesh Shvat, which Shvat, of course, the 10th day of Chodesh Shvat is the Hilula of Kvoid Kedushas Moiri V'Chami Admur, which all of the actions of the Frierdiker Rebbe are all shining and being poil Yeshua's Bekerev Haaretz, come specifically on the day of his Hilula. And so to the Keser of the months afterwards, all the way till the end of Shnas HaTzadik, which we said before is Maisi Yodeinu Koinaneo. That's the Kapitel Tzadik has those psukim about the building of the third Beis Hamikdash through Melech HaMashiach, the Melech mi Beis David, which is Zoicha to the Keser Malchus. Lo Yulubonav Adoilum. The Rambam tells us the Mashiach gets the Indian of Mulucha for himself and his kings, David the Melech, and then Mashiach for his children forever. He will build the Beis Hamikdash taken from Yad Mamish already on Chai Mar Cheshvan, even before Chav Mar Cheshvan, because it has already been fulfilled. What we say in Kiddush Levonu, Vikshu es Hashem Elokeim ve'es David Malkom, Amen. We say that we ask and we demand for Hashem and for David HaMelech, as we said in Kiddush Levonu of Chodesh Mar Cheshvan, and we say Amen, which Amen represents, of course, the fulfillment of Poyel Mamash. Says the Rebbe in Sif Yudalad v'oid v'oik, or most importantly, is similar to what we said about Vayero of Hashem, that the existence, the fact of Hashem's revelation is here, is all the time, and all we need is that it should be seen to us as well. So the Rebbe now says this in the context of Mashiach, and the Rebbe says, in addition to what we said before, that there is the mitzvah of Mashiach, that the existence and the entity of Mashiach is here already in the spark of Mashiach and the Yechidah that's in each and every Yid. Says the Rebbe, nowadays we also have the mitzvah of Mashiach kipshutoi. We have already Mashiach in the literal sense, the general Yechidah. The Rebbe says why? Because it's known that in each and every generation there is someone from the seed of Yehuda that's born that is deserving and fitting to be Mashiach for the Yidden. Someone that because of his righteousness could be the Redeemer, and when the time will come, the Eibishter will reveal himself to him and send him. And if no negative things would have gotten involved and blocked and held back, he would be Mizgali, who would reveal himself and come b'poyel mamash. So that would be true again in all previous times as well, in all generations. But based on the notification of Kvod Kedushas Meir V'chami Admuna Sidereinu, the Moshiach of our generation, that by now we finished all matters of Avodah and we're standing ready to greet Mashiach Tzidkenu. So nowadays, all of these blockages, all of these hindrances are definitely nullified already. And if that's the case, not only do we have the mitzvahs of Mashiach, but rather nowadays we have already the revelation of Mashiach, and all we need to do now is to be makabel pnei Mashiach Tzidkenu b'poyel mamash. Or to use the expression of the Parshas HaShavua, we need to accept and receive the revelation of Vayero of Hashem. So yes, again, Hashem is revealing itself, but we need to accept it and receive it and see it. Both regarding the Bnei Yisrael, Elav, the Yid himself has to receive it and accept it, and so too regarding the rest of the world, as we said before, Chai Mar Cheshvan, representing the world, B'poyel mamash, in this Gashmiistic world, as we say V'yed in davening V'yeda Kol Pol Kiyata Pa'alti, that all things will know that you Hashem made them, that in every single thing in the world will be recognizable that you made it. And in fact, L'Asid Love, when Mashiach comes, it says even the figs are going to scream out, and even the inanimate objects, a stone will call out from the wall. So everything will recognize Hashem, and how much more so Yidden that are going to recognize and call out, Hine Elokeinu Zeh, behold, here is Hashem. And since this is the case, it's understood that all of the things that we do need to be permeated with in Yonim of Mashiach and Geula, including when we eat and we drink. And the Rebbe explains a practical example. The Rebbe says we have to have such a strong desire for the Seudah of the Levyosam, the Sheirabor, and the Yayin HaMeshumar, to the extent that even after we eat, we remain hungry for the Seudah of the Levyosam, the Sheirabor, and the Yayin HaMeshumar. And therefore, a Yid argues and says to the Eibishter, I cannot fulfill the mitzvah properly of Yachalta, of eating and being satisfied and benching Hashem. I cannot do that properly until Hashem will sit us down at that table of the Seudah of L'Asid Lavoi, and surely the Eibishter will immediately fulfill this request on the very Seudah of this Shabbos day. Especially, we're holding already the third Seudah of Shabbos, which is connected to the third Geula and the third Beis Hamikdash, of Parshas Vayero, as the Chazal actually say on a pasuk in Parshas Vayero. Chazal say, what does it mean when the pasuk says Vayigdal Hayeled Vayigomal, which simply is referring to Yitzchak growing up and being weaned? So the Chazal say this is referring to the time that Osid HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Eibishter, in the future is going to make a Seudah for the Tzaddikim on the day that he's going to bestow the Chesed, the kindness, to the seed of Yitzchak. So this is referring to the big Seudah when Mashiach comes. And after the big Seudah, after they eat and drink, The Eivishter turns to David HaMelech and says, take the kois shel bracha, take that cup of wine and bench. You're honored with benching. And David HaMelech responds, Ani avarich, I will bench. It is appropriate that I should bench. And as the Gemara concludes with the proof from the pasuk, that David HaMelech says, kois Yeshua says, so I lift up the cup of salvation of Hashem Hashem Ekra and call out in the name of Hashem. And the Rebbe concludes, and the main thing is that all of this should be Regolu B'Poel Mamish. We should be able to point with our fingers and say, Zeh, here it is. Hine Zeh HaMelech HaMashiach Bo, here is Moshiach. Hine Kveit Kedushas Meir V'chami Admur Nesiderenu, here is the Rebbe, Kveit Kedushas Meir V'chami Admur, the Nasi of the generation. Hakitzu V'ranu Sheikh Neyafor, which of course is the Indian of Tchias HaMesim. And Hine Elokeinu Zeh, behold, here is Hashem. This is Hashem that we were hoping for him, and we will rejoice in his salvation. The simcha of the geula amitis v'ashlema b'golu b'poel mamish, which then will be able to make the bracha for the geula, the bracha of shechiyanu v'kimanu v'higiyanu lizman hazeh.